BXB. It's in the game!
For some reason, this is the third UFC game that I've owned and reviewed in some capacity for BXB or its previous incarnation, Brit Xbox. And honestly, that is weird to me because I don't watch any MMA broadcasting. I've tried it. Over the years, I've given it a few goes. I come from a love of pro wrestling. And I'm sure if you're watching this as a UFC fan first and a video game fan second, you're going to pretty much dismiss this opinion immediately because of the point of view I have. And that's absolutely fair. I am not going to look at this game for anything other than a person who enjoys a good fighting game that looks really, really good, which is what UFC 3 excels at. Its character models and its visuals are second to none in the combat entertainment space. They make the WWE games look like the pieces of crap they really, really are, though we all hold out hope that one day they'll become maybe as good as UFC is as a fighting game. So bear all of that in mind. This review is not me comparing the game to the sort of actual sport or talking about how the controls convey a realism in their sort of perspective of what the real sport is like. I can tell you the controls this time have been simplified a little over the previous incarnation. And I actually found my time with UFC 3 some of the easiest onboarding I've experienced in the EA game, where I often play EA games for sports that I don't have a lot of knowledge about, for example Madden or the hockey game NHL. But even NBA, I mean, I have some knowledge of basketball, but I'm certainly not up to date. And I think it's interesting when you play those games to look at them and say, well, how easy is it for someone who isn't super knowledgeable of the sport to really get into it and enjoy it? And I really think UFC 3 is the most easy to get on board with in some areas. I will admit, even at this point, me and my character in career mode, Ben Bulletproof Hall, doesn't really have an idea of how the submission system works particularly, or is very good at grappling. I tell you what I do well, I punch things really hard, and my kicks are devastating. And I predominantly played UFC 3 in career mode. I had a quick look at, the quick fight options and the multiplayer suite. I didn't really delve into the version of Ultimate Team or Ultimate UFC, as you have with this particular incarnation, because I hate those modes. I absolutely hate the card-based building a squad or building up a sort of program of characters based off random draws, which is just a microtransaction stock. I hate them. But what I really do enjoy is a good career mode, and EA of late have been knocking those out of the park. While we don't quite have a story mode here in UFC, the career mode actually does a very good job of putting your fighter front and center and connecting you to the world of UFC. It really makes you sort of feel like you are on this journey from the little league startup MMA products all the way to the big time until you're main eventing for the belt in your weight class. And that's conveyed in a few ways. You do a lot of training, which is kind of a min-maxing system that uses a fairly simple interface, which is all about making bars go up. Training isn't the most exciting element, that's for sure, of the career mode. But then there's learning the moves, which you do by having to complete objectives in these short bouts, and you can do sparring as well to learn about your next opponent. And then there's the social media interactive element, which again is just about ticking boxes and watching bars go up. However, I did like its inclusion, and I like the fact that UFC acknowledges how important a strong social media presence is for an up-and-coming fighter, for getting the word out, for getting better opportunities, for making more money, to creating more fans, and it's all connected in the sort of sports entertainment venue that we are talking about in UFC. And let's be honest, UFC has been trying to kind of have a little bit of WWE's cake. There's obviously a lot of crossover between the talent. Obviously, Brock Lesnar, famously UFC champ, and then he's come over to WWE and back to UFC and back to WWE, I don't know how many times, and then WWE have just signed, of course, the incredibly famous Ronda Rousey, who basically had weight divisions created for her, whole divisions created to give her some competition within UFC. That's how dominant an athlete and a competitor she is. I have the utmost respect for that woman. She's incredible, superhuman, amazing. But like I said, I don't have a huge knowledge of the sport. I can keep an eye on the headlines. I sort of follow Conor McGregor's stuff a little bit because he's larger than life. But I find the actual watching of UFC a little bit too brutal, a little bit too quick often, or conversely kind of boring. The submission stuff and the mat wrestling stuff in UFC I find really dull, and I don't like playing it in the game. I find the way the controls connect with that a little bit hard to understand, not particularly exciting to do. But the striking in UFC is fantastic. I just love knocking out people in career mode with a devastating roundhouse kick or a hook shot or an uppercut or millions of other moves I don't know the names for, but I do a jumping kick now, which is flipping awesome and feels great every time I land it. And the career has been really good fun. I've got so far as getting my first belt. I'm now defending it, and I'm hoping to go for a second belt, much like Conor McGregor did. I'm not playing it on hard this game. I'm playing it on a mixture of easy and medium. However, I find the challenge can spike quite unpredictably at times. Some fights, you know, whose ranking may be lower than you expect, often give you a much more difficult fight than, say, someone who has a high ranking. However, in an attempt to sort of be like the reality of the sport, fights can either last you 5 rounds of grueling stalemate or be over in 1 hit. It's unpredictable, and it is certainly exciting to play, but it can be frustrating. I found myself restarting fights more often than not. I won't lie. I wasn't going to just sit there and lose when I took a hit in the first punch that dropped me. I'm going to restart that fight, and I'm going to give it another go. But this game looks great. I think it plays really well. I really like the simplified system. You know, we've got that EA music selection, which I actually think fits the game quite nicely. Sort of an eclectic mix of often hip-hop, a little bit of rock in there, but a lot of what I would call urban, because I'm a 30-year-old man that doesn't really know what music is anymore. I like this game. I think it's a stronger iteration than maybe last time was, UFC 2. I am not in any way an expert, so because of all that, I'm going to give UFC 3 a well-deserved 3 out of 5 stars.
BXB. It's in the game.